morning, everybody. Ooh, my microphone is not in front of me, so you can't hear me. Now you can probably hear me better, I hope. Good morning, everyone. It is Steve Lookner with Agenda Free TV. We are here to bring you coverage of the White House press briefing, which is coming up in about 55 minutes. And we're going to be talking about the latest developments with the Trump administration and taking your comments on the air. So I appreciate you being here. And oops, let me just do something real quick. I need to just move something so I can see it. Need to move something. Why is this like this? That's better. Now I can see it better. Hey, thanks to our moderators for being here. We have Beth Mythical. We have Linda Belglary, Misha on X. I am still for a little while longer in Lima, Peru, visiting Lima, Peru. Oh, Queenful is moderating. Thank you, Queenful. We also have moderating right now Matthew Kohai 3. Thank you, Matthew, for moderating over there on Twitch. And thanks to our Facebook moderators as well. Hang on a moment here. Kay Lowry Body is moderating. Margaret Riley is moderating. Thank you. Thank you, Rita Evans Lang, for subscribing over there. And thank all of you guys for watching. I appreciate it. And thank you, Kristen Gates, who made a couple donations yesterday. I really appreciate it. Kristen Gates, thank you. All right, so let's... the Kinky Shepherd says maybe better off staying in Peru at this point. Wow. So let's talk about some of the things that the press secretary will be asked about today. Oh, wow. Hey, Jerry Williams just gave 10 of you memberships over on YouTube. That's so nice of you, Jerry. Thank you. Make sure you thank Jerry if you got a gift membership from Jerry. Thank you, Jerry Williams. Very nice of Jerry. And also thanks Dodger Blue for your support, who's using her Agenda Free TV mug. Awesome. Thank you, Dodger Blue. So I think one story that will obviously be asked about is this story, which is the story about a El Salvadoran migrant who was living in Maryland. And in March, he was deported by the U.S. to El Salvador. And then the Trump administration after that said it was a mistake because there was a court order saying he was not supposed to be deported to El Salvador. And the Supreme Court has now ordered that the Trump administration must facilitate his being brought back into the U.S. But yesterday we covered this. Both President Trump and President Bukele of El Salvador, who were meeting at the White House yesterday, we were covering this. They both suggested that there was no effort that was going to be made to bring this person back to the United States. So there's a hearing on this actually coming up, I think around 4 p.m. today. You can see it says right here in the Reuters article, judge to consider Trump's compliance with order over wrongly deported man. So I'm guessing there's going to be a bunch of questions about this, so why don't we talk about this for a few minutes. This is the man on the left here, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Reuters says, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran migrant who lived in the U.S. legally with a work permit and was erroneously deported to El Salvador. So you can see Reuters says, a U.S. judge today will consider her next steps on what she called the Trump administration's failure to update her on efforts to return a man illegally deported to El Salvador, in a case that critics say shows the administration may choose to defy unfavorable court orders. So there's this question of, Is this a constitutional crisis? Is it turning into a constitutional crisis? The Supreme Court has said that the Trump administration has to facilitate this man's getting back into the U.S. Critics would say the Trump administration is not doing that right now. You can see here it says, the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran man who was deported on March 15th despite a court order protecting him from removal, is one of several that have sparked concerns among Democrats and some legal analysts that Republican President Trump's administration is willing to disregard the judiciary, an independent and equal branch of government. The hearing today before U.S. District Judge Paula Zenas in Greenbelt, Maryland, was due to begin at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't think we're going to be on the air for that, but that's coming up today. Legal experts said Judge Zenas at Tuesday's hearing may ask the administration whether it told El Salvador President Bukele, who met Trump at the White House yesterday, not to release Abrego Garcia, which could amount to defiance of the court's order to facilitate his return. Kevin Johnson, a professor at UC Davis School of Law, said expect some fireworks at the court hearing today. The Trump administration says it is in compliance with Zenas' orders. In a court filing yesterday, a Department of Homeland Security official wrote, DHS does not have authority to forcibly extract an alien from the domestic custody of a foreign sovereign nation. Remember, he is in El Salvador because the U.S. made an agreement with President Bukele to house, to hold people in a prison or prisons in El Salvador in exchange for payment from the U.S., people sent by the U.S. During the meeting with Bukele on Monday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. Trump at the meeting called reporters asking whether the administration would seek the return of Abrego Garcia sick people. President Bukele of El Salvador told reporters at the White House he did not have the power to return Abrego Garcia to the U.S. The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, Bukele said, echoing the Trump administration's claim that Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang, which Washington labels a terrorist organization. Abrego Garcia's lawyers have denied he is a gang member, saying the U.S. has presented no credible evidence to support the claim. So I bet there's going to be a bunch of questions about this. By the way, you can see here at the bottom, you can't really see it. Let me just read you something from the bottom here. Hold on, if you can get down here. The last two paragraphs of the article say, so on Sunday, the administration told Zenas that facilitate. So again, the Supreme Court said, all right, hold on. Let me just go back here. I'm just going to finish reading the article, and then I'll take a bunch of comments about it, just to clarify what's going on. The U.S. Supreme Court last week the Judge Zenas on April 4th ordered the Trump administration to facilitate and effectuate Abrego Garcia's return from El Salvador, where he is being housed in a high-security mega-prison known as the Terrorist Confinement Center, or CCOT. The U.S. Supreme Court last week supported that order following a challenge by the Trump administration, but said the term effectuate was unclear and might exceed the court's authority. Zenas then ordered the Trump administration to offer a timeline for returning Abrego Garcia to the U.S. After finding that the administration did not comply with that order, the judge then ordered the government to provide daily updates about what it was doing to get Abrego Garcia back. On Sunday, the Trump administration told Zenas that facilitate meant only that it must remove any domestic obstacles impeding his return to the U.S. and did not apply to the interactions with a foreign nation. Interpreting facilitate as requiring something more than domestic action would flout the Supreme Court's order, the administration said in a legal filing. Trump has said his administration would bring the man back if the Supreme Court directed it to. So the judge has said, and the Supreme Court has said, you need to facilitate his getting back to the U.S. The Trump administration is saying, well, we think facilitate means that we're not going to stand in the way if El Salvador wants to return him. That's basically what they're saying. Not taking any positive action. So that's going to be discussed at this court hearing today, I would assume. But what do you think about this? Again, I am sure this is going to be a significant topic of conversation today. And, you know, I know there's a lot of technical details in there, but the biggest question I think surrounding all this, well, obviously there's a question of whether the guy is going to get back to the U.S., of Abrego Garcia is going to get back to the U.S., but on a bigger scale, is the Trump administration ignoring a now Supreme Court order to do something at this point? So let me take some comments from you about this. But this, I do think is going to be a significant topic of conversation. Bama in Philippines says 2 courts ruled he was a gang member. So, yeah, you know, something like that was said in the meeting yesterday, but I think it's important to clarify that he has never been convicted of being a gang member, first of all, as far as I'm aware. Let me get you some clarification on that, because I think it was kind of glossed over quickly yesterday in the meeting, and the details are actually way more complex than that. So let me get you an update on that. Hold on a second here. Hang on. I'm glad you brought it up. Hold on a second here. I want to pull something up. If you give me a moment, I have a couple things here that I want to pull up. But I do think it's an important point to discuss. Let's see, is this talk about it? Okay. So, all right, well, here's one thing I can show you. Maybe I'll show you a couple things. The deportation standoff sending the U.S. toward a constitutional crisis. This is from Washington Post. And here, who is Kilmar Abrego Garcia? He is a Salvadoran citizen who entered the United States illegally at age 16 and is now married to a U.S. citizen. The father of 3 and a sheet metal apprentice had been in the U.S. for nearly 14 years. In 2019, he was detained by police while seeking construction jobs. Let's see here. His mother ran a business selling pupusas. Is that in El Salvador, I assume? The success of the family business made them a target of the local faction of the Barrio 18th Street Gang. Court documents said members of the gang began demanding regular rent from the business and threatened to hurt Abrego Garcia's older brother if the family did not pay. Documents said, noting they did so whenever they could. When he fled to the United States, the gang tried to recruit him, who was about 12 at the time when he fled to the U.S., according to court documents. The gang stalked him, prompting the family to move twice and ultimately close the business. Oh no, after his brother fled to the United States and Abrego Garcia was still in El Salvador, the gang tried to recruit him according to court documents. They stalked him, prompting the family to move twice and ultimately close the business, after which the threats persisted. When Abrego Garcia was 16, his family sent him to the U.S., which he entered without inspection, according to court documents. He joined his brother, who is now a U.S. citizen, in Maryland, where he worked in construction and met his wife, with whom he has 3 children. His mother is a U.S. citizen. His wife is a U.S. citizen. In 2019, an immigration judge granted him a form of relief called a withholding of removal, which prohibits deportation to El Salvador unless the order is terminated. To obtain this order, a non-citizen must prove he is more likely than not to suffer persecution if returned to his country of origin. What is he accused of? Abrego Garcia was detained in 2019 alongside 3 other young men who were soliciting employment outside a Home Depot. Officers with the Prince George's County Police Department repeatedly asked Abrego Garcia whether he was a gang member, which he denied. He was taken into ICE custody, with agents arguing that local police had, quote, verified that he was an active member of MS-13 with the Western clique in New York based on his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and the words of a confidential informant. The details from the informant, which officials have not disclosed, did not result in Abrego Garcia being charged with a crime or otherwise implicated. Nothing came of it, U.S. District Court Judge Paula Zenas wrote. Abrego Garcia has never been arrested or charged with any crime in either the United States or El Salvador, according to public records and attorneys. So in 2019, he was arrested with several other people, taken into custody when they were searching for work, looking for work outside a Home Depot. And then ICE agents claimed that local police had, quote, verified he was an active member of MS-13. The evidence for that was his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and the words of a confidential informant, and the details of that informant's account have not been disclosed. Is he a MS-13 gang member? The judge currently overseeing his case, Paula Zenas, said there is no evidence that Abrego Garcia, who has never lived in New York, is a gang member. Remember, the accusation supposedly by the local police in Maryland in 2019 was that he was an active member of MS-13 with the Western clique in New York. So he has never lived in New York. Zenas said there's no evidence that Abrego Garcia, Judge Zenas says there's no evidence that Abrego Garcia, who has never lived in New York, is a gang member. That's what the current judge on the case said. Abrego and his Garcia and his attorneys have also denied the claim, which Trump officials repeated yesterday. Trump has declared MS-13 a foreign terrorist organization, which the administration said nullifies the immigration judge's 2019 order protecting him from deportation. Relatives of others deported during last month's sudden airlift have also denied they were gang members, with the AP reporting that some were targeted for everyday tattoos. The administration has acknowledged in court that many do not have criminal records in the U.S. So, I mean, I can't tell you if he's a gang member. He certainly has never been convicted in a court in a trial of being a gang member. And the article lays out what the evidence cited in 2019 was, which was his Chicago Bulls. Let me go over this again. His Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and the words of a confidential informant, and those details from the informant have not been disclosed. And then there was another thing I wanted to mention. The New York Times had an article yesterday where they pointed out that Abrego Garcia has never been charged with, let alone convicted of, being a member of the MS-13 gang. They say during his deportation proceedings there was some evidence introduced that he belonged to MS-13. And at that point, judges decided it was enough to keep him in custody while the matter was resolved, but other judges have found the same evidence to be lacking. And then, actually, I can show you, if I can find it here. So this is the court ruling. You'll see it on your screen now. A court ruling regarding Abrego Garcia from about a week ago. And this is Judge Zenas', Paula Zenas, district court judge, I believe. And she said here in the, where is it here? If I can find this for you, she said, you'll see it on your screen in a second. Oops. The, quote, evidence against Abrego Garcia, where is it here? I want to go back to the actual, where she's getting the footnote from. She said the evidence against Abrego Garcia consisted of nothing more than his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and a vague, uncorroborated allegation from a confidential informant claiming he belonged to MS-13's Western Clique in New York, a place he has never lived. So, yeah, you can see here she said DHS relied principally on a singular, unsubstantiated allegation that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13. Anyways, so, you know, that's, I don't know if he was a member of MS-13, but it's not something he's been convicted of in a court. And it's not something that there's a lot of publicly available compelling evidence for. Now, maybe the government has compelling evidence that has not been made public. So, anyways, I just wanted to clarify that. I know it's a little detail-oriented, but I think it's important to talk about the details here. All right, sorry. So I want to take some more comments here from you guys. Anyways, the reason that I'm talking about this on this broadcast is I do believe it might be the top topic of discussion at the press briefing today. So that's why we're talking about this here. Oops, hold on. All right, let me take some more comments from you guys. Let's see here. But I'm sure there'll be other topics too. Yeah, I would be careful. I mean, this probably goes for maybe most news stories. I would be careful about quick takes from either side. Very often with news stories, the details are way more complex than very quick takes on either side. Fight says he came here illegally. Yeah, I believe he originally came illegally, but then also was here on a work permit. I think eventually he had a work permit to work. He originally came into the country illegally. CRT says he is married to a U.S. citizen. That is true. Has 3 kids. CRT thinks he should never have been sent away for life based off of his clothes. Iron Man says, I don't know what the solution is to this. Chuck D30 says, it isn't even a story. A legal alien is gone. End of discussion. Well, again, that's not what the U.S. court system said. The U.S. judicial branch in 2019 issued an order that he not be removed to El Salvador. And I think it was last week, the Supreme Court said the Trump administration needed to facilitate his being returned to the U.S. And remember, the Trump administration has said multiple times in court that he was mistakenly sent to El Salvador. Anyways, we'll have to see what happens with this. I'm sure they'll be talking about it at the briefing. We should talk about a couple other topics, though. The briefing is coming up in 30 minutes. All right. By the way, I want to thank you for joining us today. And I want to say a quick thanks to our member, that guy from Oregon. Thank you, that guy from Oregon, for being a member. Thank you also, hold on a second. I think it's Temi Dank. Hold on a second here. Temi Dank. Thanks for the gift memberships, Temi Dank. That's very nice of you over there on YouTube. Thank you, Sarah, for being a member. Thank you, Martin Gingrich. Thank you, Martin. I appreciate it. Yeah, Martin says was he here illegally. Again, he came into the country illegally. I believe he had a work permit at the time, currently, because he's currently married to a U.S. citizen. And they have several children. Without taking too much time, maybe I can get you a quick answer about that. I don't have a quick summary of what his current status is. Yes, I do have a summary of what his status is. Hold on, I can tell you that real quick. Here. Okay. You can see here from the AP, in October 2019, an immigration judge denied Abrego Garcia's asylum request, but granted him protection from being deported back to El Salvador because of a well-founded fear of gang persecution. According to his case, he was released and ICE did not appeal. Abrego Garcia checked in with ICE yearly while the Department of Homeland Security issued him a work permit. His attorney said in court filings. He joined a union and was employed full-time as a sheet metal apprentice. Thank you, PZ Papa Zulu, for your support. Thank you, PZ Papa Zulu. I think I read that quote a little earlier in one of the articles. Thank you, PZ Papa Zulu. Lift the veil. Thank you, Lift the Veil. But please respect the rules of the chat. Thanks also to our member. Hold on a second here. Can I pet that AUG? Our member, thank you. Janet B, hey, thanks for the gift membership. So nice of you, Janet B. That's really kind of you. Also, thanks Lee Elmer, who says, is there any news on the Iran deal? I haven't been keeping up with the negotiations from day to day. There's no deal. I'm not aware that there's any kind of huge update. Maybe we can talk about that for a second. But I'm not aware of any kind of big Iran-U.S. negotiations update. Hang on a moment. Oh, I know something else that we're going to talk about. I got to mention. That's going to be talked about in the briefing today. You can see here, Tehran says next round of Iran-U.S. nuclear talks in Oman after Rome, named by officials. Talks between Iran and the U.S. over Tehran's rapidly advancing nuclear program appeared ready to leave the Middle East on Monday, as an Italian source and others said the next round of negotiations would take place in Rome. But early Tuesday, Iran insisted the next round would take place, be held in Oman. This is from AP. President Trump complained Monday about the pace of nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran as the two countries start a new round of pivotal negotiations. President Trump said yesterday, "I think they're tapping us along." The stakes of negotiations couldn't be higher for the two nations, closing in on a half-century of enmity. Trump has repeatedly threatened to unleash airstrikes targeting Iran's nuclear program. If a deal isn't reached, Iranian officials increasingly warn they could pursue a nuclear weapon with their stockpile of uranium enriched to near weapons-grade levels. President Trump has repeatedly said they cannot have a nuclear weapon. AP also says sanctions relief and enrichment remain top issues. The 2015 nuclear deal, that's the one that President Trump pulled out of, correct? Do I have that right? Hold on. Yeah, that was the deal that was reached in 2015, and President Trump pulled out of it in 2018. But, oops, that previous deal, oops, hold on, you'll see in a second, saw Iran agree to drastically reduce its stockpile of uranium and only enrich up to 3.67%, enough for its nuclear power plant at Bushehr. Today, Iran enriches up to 60%, a short technical step from weapons-grade levels, and has enough stockpile for multiple nuclear bombs should it choose to build them. That deal in 2015 lifted economic sanctions on Iran and unfroze assets around the world. The deal's collapse refroze those funds and limited Iran's ability to sell crude oil abroad, though it still sells to China, likely at a sharp discount. While the U.S. can offer sanctions relief for Iran's beleaguered economy, it remains unclear just how much Iran will be willing to concede. Judging from negotiations since 2018, Iran will likely ask to keep enriching uranium up to at least 20%. However, neither side has offered any public statements about what it is specifically seeking in the talks. So if there's any huge updates on that, I will certainly let you know. I don't know if President Trump has posted about that today. I don't see anything about it today on his Truth Social about it. Excuse me. Oh, by the way, thanks to Channeling Gary. Thanks, PZ Papa Zulu. PZ Papa Zulu thinks that Bukele is not going to release Abrego Garcia. Thank you. Thank you also, Micro Geek, for the gift memberships. That's so nice of you. And Bebop and Rock Steady, thank you. And Jimster, thanks for being a member. And thank you, Missy. Missy thinks Abrego wasn't, quote, deported. She thinks he was sent to a terrorist prison with no trial. By the way, thanks to Janet B. That's very kind of you, Janet B. And thank you again, Channeling Gary. Channeling Gary's comment is Trump wants to bomb drug cartels, annex Canada, take over Greenland, and seize control of Panama, but can't return one man from El Salvador. So our viewer, Channeling Gary, I think, is skeptical of the administration's, well, I don't know if skeptical is the right word, but Channeling Gary seems to think Trump could do it if he wanted to. By the way, shout out to our moderators who are here. We have... I'll tell you in a second. We have to talk about the Harvard thing. I'm guessing that's going to be asked about in the press briefing. Beth Mythical is moderating. Thank you, Beth. And Kay Lowry Body, thank you, Kay. She's over on Facebook. And Matthew Kohai 3, and I Got That Fire on Twitch. Our viewer on Twitch, Wild Goose Stream, says Trump is going to serve a third term. Our viewer Dougie on Twitch thinks Abrego Garcia is not coming back to the United States. That's been made clear, and the courts have no recourse. It's an interesting question. If the courts decide the administration is not going along with their ruling, what can they do about it? Could they hold the administration in contempt? I'm not a legal expert, so I have no idea. I don't know what that would entail. It's a good question. I'm not the one to answer that for you. I'll have to do some research on it. Thanks to Dev Danger. Did I get that right? Hold on. It's small on my setup here. I'm not using my normal setup because I'm still in Lima, Peru. Dev Danger, thanks for being a member. Thank you also, Kay Chang. Kay Chang says Obama expedited deportation of 1,400 illegals, many no due process. Look it up for your viewers. I can't get that now. I'm not going to get into that research now. I would have to research this thing. It's an interesting comment, but we're moving on to a different topic. We have 15 minutes before the briefing. I said I wanted to talk about the Harvard topic. I'm not sure about your claim that Obama deported people with no due process. I would have to look that up and research it. Let's talk about the Harvard thing. I want to talk about that. It's very interesting, that whole story. And I think it'll be asked about today. Hey, thank you to John, is it Tepley? Thank you, John, for being a member. John Tepley. Okay, this is interesting. Oh, I have a little video I might be able to show you about this too. Oh, that's interesting. I can show you the little video about that. Oops, hold on. Okay, here you go. Harvard rejects Trump's demands, gets hit by $2.3 billion funding freeze. Harvard on Monday, Harvard University, rejected numerous demands from the Trump administration and said it would cede control of the school. Sorry, they didn't say that. Harvard University rejected numerous demands from the Trump administration. The demands were that it would succeed, it would give up control of the school to a conservative. Sorry, it's a little weird. The sentence says, Harvard on Monday rejected numerous demands from the Trump administration that Harvard said would cede control of the school to a conservative government that portrays universities as dangerously leftist. Within hours of Harvard taking its stand against the Trump administration, the administration announced it was freezing $2.3 billion in federal funding to the school. The funding freeze comes after the Trump administration said last month it was reviewing $9 billion in federal contracts and grants to Harvard as part of a crackdown on what it says is anti-Semitism that erupted on college campuses during pro-Palestinian protests in the past 18 months. On Monday, a Department of Education task force on combating anti-Semitism, this is the Trump administration, accused America's oldest university, Harvard, of having a troubling entitlement mindset that is endemic in our nation's most prestigious universities and colleges, that federal investment does not come with the responsibility to uphold civil rights laws. The exchange escalates the high-stakes dispute between the Trump administration and some of the world's richest universities that has raised concerns about speech and academic freedoms. The administration has frozen hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding for numerous universities, pressing the institutions to make policy changes and citing what it says is a failure to fight anti-Semitism on campus. Harvard President Alan Garber wrote in a public letter on Monday that demands made by the Department of Education last week would allow the federal government to control the Harvard community and threaten the school's values as a private institution devoted to the pursuit, production, and dissemination of knowledge. No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they could admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue, Garber wrote. Little background here. In a letter on Friday, the Education Department stated that Harvard had failed to live up to both the intellectual and civil rights conditions that justify federal investment. The Trump administration Education Department demanded that Harvard work to reduce the influence of faculty, staff, and students who are more committed to activism than scholarship, and have an external panel audit the faculty and students of each department to ensure viewpoint diversity. The letter from the Trump administration Education Department also stated that Harvard by this August must only hire faculty and admit students based on merit and cease all preferences based on race, color, or national origin. The Trump administration demanded that the university must also screen international students to prevent admitting students hostile to American values and report to federal immigration authorities foreign students who violate conduct rules. Harvard President Garber said that the federal government's demands that it, quote, audit the viewpoints of its students, faculty, and staff to ferret out left-wing thinkers generally opposed to the Trump administration clearly violated the university's First Amendment rights to freedom of speech. This university will not surrender its independence or relinquish its constitutional rights, Garber wrote. Garber added that while Harvard is taking steps to address anti-Semitism on campus, these ends will not be achieved by the assertions of power unmoored from the law to control teaching and learning at Harvard and to dictate how we operate. So a big disagreement here, big conflict between Harvard and the Trump administration. By the way, I think I have a short video I can play you on this. Hang on a moment. I think there's a video that goes along with this. Let me see if I can get it up on the screen quickly for you. Where is it here? Where is it? Okay, I have it on the screen for you. Here is the video that goes along with the article. The video from Reuters. Let's watch this short video. Oops. We'll watch it in a second. You can't see it yet, but I'm going to fix that, hopefully. Now you can see it. All right, let's play this. Hopefully this works.
U.S. President Donald Trump's administration announced on Monday it was freezing $2.3 billion in federal funding to Harvard. The move came hours after the university rejected numerous demands from the Department of Education, which Harvard President Alan Garber wrote in a letter would allow the federal government to, quote, control the Harvard community and threaten the school's values. The funding freeze comes after the Trump administration said last month it was reviewing $9 billion in federal contracts and grants to Harvard. That's part of a crackdown on what it says is anti-Semitism that erupted on college campuses during pro-Palestinian protests over the past 18 months. The administration has already frozen hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding for numerous universities. It's pressing institutions to make policy changes, citing what it says is a failure to fight anti-Semitism on campus. Deportation proceedings have begun against some detained foreign students who took part in pro-Palestinian demonstrations, while visas for hundreds of other students have been canceled. In a letter on Friday, the Education Department stated that Harvard had, quote, failed to live up to both the intellectual and civil rights conditions that justify federal investment. Harvard agreed in January to provide additional protections for Jewish students. And Garber said in his letter that while the university is taking steps to address anti-Semitism on campus, quote, these ends will not be achieved by assertions of power unmoored from the law to control teaching and learning at Harvard and to dictate how we operate. To ease any funding crunch created by a cutoff in federal funding, Harvard is working to borrow $750 million from Wall Street.
There you go. Hang on, I just want to see if I have any video available from the press briefing yet room. One moment, guys. One moment here. One moment. All right, I got to pull this up. Give me a second. I need to pull it up, see if I have the video yet. They're not starting yet, but maybe I should get some video before they start. Yes, I have video from the press briefing room. If you give me a moment, I'm going to put that video up on the screen for you. Then we'll take some comments. Just give me a moment. I got to go. Okay, so I got to get organized here. Looks like they're starting on time. I got to get organized here. Thanks for your patience. Hold on. It is 11:54. One moment. I'm going to get the video on the screen for you now. I promise. All right, there it is. There's the press room. So let me get that up on the screen for you. One moment here. Okay, stop that. Put that up there. This is bottom. No. Good. I got that. Okay, check it out, guys. Oops. Check it out. Coming up right now. Here is the video from the press briefing room. Right there. Look. We got audio too. Let me put up live from the White House up there. It's the White House press briefing room. It's the White House press briefing room. So I want to take a few more comments here. But had to make sure we had that all set to go. Also, a quick thank you to Bebop and Rocksteady. Thanks so much for your support. And Bebop and Rocksteady thinks that Harvard could completely fund itself for several years with no new money. Thanks also PZ Papa Zulu, who says, no more money or free ride for anyone. These Ivy League colleges have billions of dollars a year in their endowments. You know, I was reading an interesting article I want to mention real quick. Hey, thanks to Shelley for your support. The Economist had a very interesting article about the conflict between the Trump administration and some of these high-ranking universities. And I don't know if I can pull it up here real quick just so I can mention something about it. So one part of this article in The Economist from April 12th, from a few days ago, it said that there's a basic compact that has existed for decades between universities and the federal government. The taxpayers fund scientific research and provide grants for students from poor families, and in return, universities do world-changing research. They talk about how researchers at American universities invented the internet. For example, this deal, says The Economist, has been the source of military as well as economic power. It has contributed to almost every technological leap that has boosted output, from the internet to mRNA vaccines and GLP-1 agonists to artificial intelligence. It has made America a magnet for talented, ambitious people from around the world. It is this compact that is the key to America's prosperity, not bringing car factories back to the Rust Belts, they say, and the Trump administration wants to tear up the compact. So again, a point that they're making, whether you agree with them or not on their overall view, the point that they're making is that the money that the U.S. government spends gives to universities for research has in the past benefited the U.S. as a whole, as there's been all kinds of technological advances and discoveries made coming out of this research being done at universities. So it's an interesting perspective. If you want to read the whole article, I'll post a link to it in the chat. You can check it out. I think The Economist, I subscribe to it. I think they might let you read a few articles for free if you like, if you like sign up, if you register or something. So I'll post the link in the chat. I see Peter Ducey on the right from Fox News. Now, who is on the left? That I don't know. Maybe some of you know. Thank you to Tim Glenn. Thank you, Tim, for your support. Thank you also, Vegas Raiders, for your support. And Randy K. Thank you, Randy K. This is going to start any moment now. I have to say any moment instead of coming up because it's now 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Our viewer, I, thinks there is a brain drain happening. I think Singapore is a much better environment for university. It's an interesting topic of whether, because you know, a bunch of university students have had their visas taken away in recent weeks. Might that affect the numbers of grad students who come to the U.S. from other countries? I don't know. I have no idea about this. It's an interesting topic.
People are entitled to their own deportation hearing. So now the question becomes, what's this president going to do? Are they just going to try their luck in court with an appeal? More often than not, so far, in court, a lot of these things they've been trying to do have been holding up. Or are they just going to try to get rid of these 530,000 plus folks, some of whom have been found to have committed fraud on their applications, and that is why President Trump thinks he can get rid of this program. Something else that we would like to get to the bottom of, what laws do officials here think they need to change to deport people who are born in the United States with long rap sheets to cheap prison cells in Central America? We think we will get answers to some of this, hopefully all of it, any minute. Bill.
Peter Ducey is on the right there from Fox News. Big Nose Brit says, war with Iran? Well, you know, President Trump has said that they will not be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, and he has threatened military action if some agreement can't be reached with them. Thank you, PZ Papa Zulu. That's so nice of you, PZ Papa Zulu. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Randy Kay says in the CBS interview, Abrego Garcia's wife said he told her he may be sent to CCOT. Why would an innocent person say that? Oh, I don't know. I don't have I didn't see the interview, so I can't really comment on that. But thank you again, Randy Kay. At any moment now, press briefing. We'll take some comments from you guys after the press briefing. And then hold on a second here. Thank you, Tim Glenn, by the way. Just a heads up, when this starts, I might, when the questions start being asked, I'll probably switch over to the White House feed because I have a couple different feeds, but I'll probably switch over to the White House feed when the questions start because they'll turn the camera around and show the questioners. So during the press briefing, you might notice like things go back for a second and repeat for a second or something. That's just me switching the camera. Thank you so much for being here at the stream today. I appreciate it. I don't know how long this will be. Sometimes these are long. The last one was like 20 minutes, 22 minutes, I think, or something. So who knows how long it'll be. I haven't even checked for more updates, news updates while I'm here, while we're on the air.
Hold on. Watch out. I feel like
It's like a 1 in a million chance that it happens, but then once it happens once, it's going to happen all the time.
No, it happened to Kelly from News Nation. I was like 20 seconds out when that happened to you, and my eyes were like, I was like so confused.
Is that bird? Yeah, the bird.
Oh, we have to look at it right now. Yeah, it's
You ever seen the bird?
You handled it extremely well. I would not have handled it that well. Just for the record. It was so good. I'm like, that bird knew not to come to me. Here's no amount smelling to the
Hearing the chatter.
from the ceiling. So.
We are hearing some chatter.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
why
the bird
Peter
thing
uses
too.
it better.
What's great about that though too, like 15 seconds on cam. They were trying to figure it out. See that? Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, that was worth it.
Right on. Oh yeah.
I did not like that at all.
It felt like just somebody pulling my hair over.
Oops. I didn't take off the 1 p.m. from the
Because I
headline.
could see our,
No, that's
our
stupid.
hair. Otherwise, I would have thought I was being attacked. I would have,
JJ.
yeah, gone down. Never happened when Commander Biden was here too.
Thanks again for joining our coverage. If there's big news later today, we'll do live stream on it later today. John Turpin said if Abrego Garcia is married to a citizen, how come he's not naturalized? I don't know how that works. I don't know if when you're married to a citizen, does that give you some kind of special track to citizenship? I don't know. I don't know if he was on some sort of path or something. I have no idea.
No.
I don't believe it automatically makes you a citizen. He would be a citizen if that were the case. Teresa says it's used to. Maybe it changed over time. I don't know. One of our viewers said you need to go to a process after you're married. That's what Il Nino said. It's an interesting question. I don't have the details myself. Melissa says he would need to go through the naturalization process. Mustang says being married does help. TJ Adams says there is a time period a friend married a woman he brought over from the Philippines. KC says it doesn't give it to you automatically, and if you have entered illegally, it is a lot tougher. One of our viewers said, watch 90 Day Fiancé, and you will understand the process. Thankful Hearts, it is a process. Antonio thinks after marriage you can file for residency, then 3 to 5 years you can apply for citizenship. That's what Antonio thinks.
No, she's on the hill. Yeah. Her last time, we got lucky with the time I was here.
Any moment now, this will start.
Did you? Was that with the first one?
The first one.
One of the viewers said, is AP still banned from press conferences? I don't know about the deal with the press conferences.
Yeah.
Axios reported that yesterday the White House barred an AP reporter and photographer from an Oval Office press conference yesterday, despite a court order that it must stop, from last week, that it must stop blocking the AP. The headline in Axios from yesterday about yesterday was White House bars AP reporter. 10 minutes? Oh, they just said 10 minutes. Hear that? They usually say 2 minutes. They just said 10 minutes. What's the delay? What's the delay?
Who, me? You go tell them. They don't listen to me.
Yeah, they do. They watch what?
That was pretty funny. So usually when that announcement happens, they say 2 minutes, but they said 10 minutes. While we're waiting, let me mention on this AP thing. The AP thing might be asked about, but let me give you an update on that.
Yeah.
AP themselves actually has a story about this. AP says, despite a court order, White House bars AP from Oval Office event. Despite a court order, a reporter and photographer from the Associated Press were barred from an Oval Office news conference yesterday with Donald Trump and his counterpart from El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. Last week's federal court decision forbidding the Trump administration from punishing the AP for refusing to rename the Gulf of Mexico was to take effect yesterday. The administration is appealing the decision and arguing with the news outlet over whether it needs to change anything, but until those appeals are exhausted. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit set a Thursday hearing on Trump's request that any changes be delayed while case is reviewed. The AP is fighting for more access as soon as possible. Later on Monday, 2 AP photographers were admitted to an event honoring Ohio State's championship football team on the more spacious South Lawn, but a text reporter was turned away. This dispute stems from AP's decision not to follow the president's executive order to rename the Gulf of Mexico, although AP Style does cite Trump's wish that it be called the Gulf of America. The AP argued, and U.S. District Judge Trevor N. McFadden agreed last week, that the government cannot punish the news organization for exercising its right to free speech. Anyway, so I don't know if that's going to be asked about today. I don't know if AP, it didn't mention the White House press briefings. I don't know if they have reported the press briefings or not, and whether that's changed. I feel like they have in the past, but I'm not sure. It's normally these things start pretty close to on time. It's not going to be that late. Probably start like 20 minutes late or something today, but it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I've heard.
Scott McFarlane from CBS News reports that in a new court filing from Kilmar, Abrego, Garcia's attorneys, they say that the Trump administration is defying the court order that says the Trump administration needs to facilitate his return. And his attorneys are saying there is no evidence that anyone has requested the release of Abrego Garcia. There is a hearing in court for that case later today, I think at 4 Eastern.
Dates.
Thank you for being here for our live White House press briefing coverage. After the briefing, we will take your comments on the air. We didn't even talk about, there was another interesting story that might be asked about today, yesterday, which was a college student, let me get this right. I believe it was that a student was taken into custody at his citizenship appointment. By immigration authorities. Where is this? Yes. A Palestinian activist expecting U.S. citizenship interview is arrested instead by ICE in Vermont. That's from AP. And this has been widely reported. It's not just AP reporting it. A Palestinian man who led protests against the war in Gaza as a student at Columbia University was arrested yesterday at a Vermont immigration office where he expected to be interviewed about finalizing his U.S. citizenship, his attorney said. Moshen Madawi, a legal permanent resident, I believe he had a green card, who has held it, yes, he has held a green card since 2015, was detained at the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services office in Colchester, Vermont, by Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents. His attorneys say they do not know where he is. They filed a petition in federal court seeking an order barring the government from removing him from the state or county. He recently completed coursework at Columbia and was expected to graduate in May before beginning a master's degree program there in the fall. As a student, he was an outspoken critic of Israel's military campaign in Gaza and organized campus protests until March 2024. This should start momentarily, by the way. Yeah, Reuters said that this Columbia University student was arrested upon arriving for an interview for his U.S. citizenship petition. Again, he has held a green card since 2015. A judge ordered President Trump and other senior officials not to remove him from the U.S. or take him out of the state of Vermont. Reuters says his circumstances are similar to those of Palestinian student activist Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia student who was detained in the New York area on March 8th and taken to a Louisiana detention facility for deportation. An immigration judge in Louisiana ruled on Friday that Khalil can be deported, allowing the Trump administration to proceed with their effort to deport foreign pro-Palestinian students who are in the U.S. legally and have not been charged with any crimes. One of our viewers said LMAO got tricked. You know, I was wondering about this. I don't know that the Columbia student who was arrested yesterday at his citizenship interview, I don't know that he got tricked. I mean, it's possible that he knew something might happen there. I haven't done enough research on it to know. But I wouldn't just assume that he was like, oh, I'm fine, nothing's going to happen. I'm sure he's been keeping up with what's going on. So it's an interesting question about whether he thought something like that was possible then. I don't know. Hey, thanks to Marnie for being a member. Also thanks to Jan Erik Edvardsen from Norway. Thank you, Jan. It's kind of you. Mustang says, let's see how long this briefing will last. Yeah, as I mentioned, the last one was pretty short. It was around 22 or 23 minutes, if I remember correctly. But some of them are longer. Thanks to our mods. I got that fire, Matthew Kohai 3 over there on Twitch. Papa Bear Surly Dev. Kay Lowry Body on Facebook. Margaret Riley, thank you. Linda Belk, Larry, Misha over on X. Beth Mythical, Danny James on YouTube. Larissa the Night Owl. Thanks, mods. I'm going to change it to any moment White House press briefing because I do think it's any moment now. There was a 10-minute warning like 10 minutes ago.
Until the briefing.
2 minutes. 2 minutes till the briefing. We just got the 2-minute warning, guys. Two minutes, less than 2 minutes now. I like that they have that announcement just come over on the PA system there, it sounds like. But the door opened, some people came in. Again, when the briefing starts, when the questions start, I'll probably switch the feed. So if you notice the video kind of jump for a second or something, that's me fixing it, or switching it. Hey, thanks to PZ Papa Zulu for your support. PZ Papa Zulu. Also, if the video and audio isn't synced up, I should be able to fix it, but it might take a couple seconds. I'm not in my normal studio. I'm still visiting Lima for a little while longer, Lima, Peru. So thanks for bearing with me. Hopefully everything goes okay with the broadcast. G-Slayer says, here we go. DeWatchman says, I ate all my snacks waiting. Gas Gat says, hang on to your hats. Thank you, VV. Gary Weir says, getting my coffee ready. Any moment now. The camera's moving around a little bit, getting ready. Mary Ann Sell says the room has become more quiet. I am Puff Puff says everyone seems anxiously waiting. Eamon O'Leary says, I need more coffee. Unleashed Pokey Gamer is walking home listening to this. Paul says, it's been over 3 minutes now since the 2-minute warning. I don't know if it has. Oh, thank you, Eamon O'Leary, who says, Kafefe. Thank you, Eamon. That's very kind of you. One of our viewers just said it's about a half an hour late. Yeah, normally they start more on time. Maybe there was just some unanticipated stuff going on. Thanks, Paulette, for watching, and Roland for watching. Lee Elmore thinks it'll be 5 seconds. Here we go. Here we go. It's starting.
Good afternoon, everybody. I apologize for my tardiness, but I came directly from the Oval. I have some newsy updates to share from the President, which I know you all very much value and appreciate. So let's get to it. The President promised millions of Christians across the country on the campaign trail that he would create a White House faith office when he returned to the White House, and he has delivered on that promise. The White House Faith Office has put together an extraordinary week-long celebration currently underway for Holy Week ahead of Easter Sunday. The President signed a Holy Week proclamation, filmed a special presidential video message, and will be hosting a pre-Easter dinner tomorrow night and a White House staff Easter worship service on Thursday. The President and the First Lady are honored to continue the tradition of the White House Easter egg roll, which will take place on the South Lawn next Monday. In other news, President Trump is turning America into a manufacturing superpower again. Yesterday, there was a monumental announcement by NVIDIA, one of the largest companies in the world. This is just the latest example. For the first time ever, chip-making giant NVIDIA will produce AI supercomputers entirely in the United States, as part of its pledge to produce $50 billion worth of AI infrastructure in our country over the next 4 years. With their manufacturing partners, they have commissioned more than 1 million square feet of manufacturing space to build and test NVIDIA Blackwell chips in the great state of Arizona and AI supercomputers in the great state of Texas. NVIDIA's founder and CEO Jensen Huang touted how the engines of the world's AI infrastructure are being built in the United States for the first time. This is the Trump effect. This follows trillions in other U.S. investments announced already. including $500 billion from Apple and U.S.-based manufacturing and training, $100 billion from TSMC and U.S.-based chips manufacturing, and the $500 billion private investment led by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank in artificial intelligence infrastructure. Under President Trump, we're going to produce the cars, the ships, the chips, the airplanes, minerals, and medicines that we need right here in America at the hands of American workers. On the border, President Trump continues to break records and protect our homeland. According to CBP, Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border for the entire month of March 2025 were lower than the first 2 days of March 2024 under Joe Biden. Incredible law enforcement officers are arresting violent illegal aliens from American communities every day. Here are a few examples from the latest ICE report, which I received this morning. ICE Los Angeles arrested a 54-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of rape by threat, sodomy with a person under 14 years, and kidnapping in San Jose, California. ICE Houston has arrested a 23-year-old citizen of Mexico convicted of predatory criminal sexual assault of a child in Cook County, Illinois. ICE Houston arrested a 64-year-old citizen of Honduras convicted of murder in Los Angeles County, California. ICE Chicago arrested a 49-year-old citizen of Guatemala convicted of assault and arson in Prince Williams, Virginia, not far from here. ICE Denver arrested a 36-year-old citizen of Mexico who is registered as a sex offender and has been convicted of sexual assault of a child in Lake County, Colorado. ICE Baltimore arrested a 50-year-old citizen of China convicted of sex trafficking in Bel Air, Maryland. And ICE Boston arrested a 46-year-old citizen of Jamaica convicted of 3 counts of rape of a child and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery of a child under 14 in Boston, Massachusetts. President Trump and our administration will not rest until every single violent illegal alien is removed from our country. The safety of the American people is too important to settle for anything less. On that note, the Democrat and media outrage over the deportation of Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland, has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin. And if you didn't see, yesterday, a Maryland jury found illegal alien Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez guilty of murdering Rachel Morin in August of 2023. She was a 37-year-old mother of 5 who was jogging in an otherwise safe community northeast of Baltimore when this monster ambushed, strangled, and beat her to death before stuffing her brutalized body in a tunnel drain. The Morin family finally got justice yesterday, but they will never get Rachel back. Our hearts go out to Rachel's family, her 5 children, and her mother, Patty, who has suffered the unimaginable loss of her daughter. In case you missed it last week, President Trump signed a national security presidential memorandum directing federal agencies administering federal land on the border to make land available to the Defense Department in a new national defense area. This followed the president's Day 1 executive order committing his administration to marshal all available resources and authorities to stop the unprecedented flood of illegal aliens into our country and to obtain complete operational control of the borders of the United States of America. Once again, the president is fulfilling another key promise. This new national defense area spans more than 170 miles across our border in New Mexico, but in the coming weeks, this administration will add more than 90 miles in the state of Texas. This national defense area will enhance our ability to detect, interdict, and prosecute the illegal aliens, criminal gangs, and terrorists who were able to invade our country without consequence for the past 4 years under the Biden administration. It will also bolster our defenses against fentanyl and other dangerous narcotics that have been poisoning our communities. With all of this work being done to make America great again, we continue to see a positive response from the American public. A brand new poll published from the Daily Mail and JL Partners this morning found that President Trump's approval rating is at an all-time high. That's because the president is working tirelessly to keep his promises to the American people, as I just saw him doing today in the Oval Office. We have a reporter in our new media seat today, Matthew Foldy. I like your boots, Matt, who is the editor-in-chief of the Washington Reporter. Washington Reporter is a new, fast-growing outlet that breaks stories about legislation.
And we've interviewed you as well. So, Karoline, thanks so much for having me here on behalf of our readership and the millions of Americans who I think appreciate what you're doing with the new media seat here and making this a more accessible briefing room. I'm curious with Harvard. We saw the Trump administration today announce it's cutting around $2 billion, or freezing $2 billion in funds to Harvard because the campus has serious problems with violence and with anti-Semitism. We saw President Obama, former President Obama, side with Harvard, which rejected the Trump administration's demands. I'm curious, where does the administration see this going with Harvard and with other colleges and universities in America that are refusing to reform in wake of the sort of craziness that we've seen take over some of them?
Thank you, Matt, for being here, and thanks for the question. When it comes to Harvard, the president's position on this is grounded in common sense, in the basic principle that Jewish American students, or students of any faith, should not be illegally harassed and targeted on our nation's college campuses. And we unfortunately saw that illegal discrimination take place on the campus of Harvard. There are countless examples to prove it, particularly with the stunning confession by then Harvard President Claudine Gay, who said that bullying and harassment depended on the context. The president at that time made it clear to the American public he was not going to tolerate illegal harassment and anti-Semitism taking place in violations of federal law. So the president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding. Unfortunately, Harvard has not taken the president or the administration's demands seriously. All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. I think the president is also begging a good question. More than $2 billion out the door to Harvard when they have a more than $50 billion endowment. Why are the American taxpayers subsidizing a university that has billions of dollars in the bank already? And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
I'm curious, you had just mentioned Rachel Warren, and I'm a Maryland man, and I think most Marylanders appreciate what you were saying today. We've seen that Chris Van Hollen, who was Rachel Warren's senator, basically threatening to fly to El Salvador to press for the release of someone who was in America illegally. And not as much sort of from him about Rachel Warren's horrific murder and the verdict that was, I think, rightly reached yesterday. What does the administration think about the priorities we're seeing from Senate Democrats in terms of illegal immigrants instead of the work that agencies like ICE and DHS are doing with the Trump administration?
It's mind-boggling, the priorities of the modern-day Democrat Party. I think it's atrocious that you have Democrats in Congress on Capitol Hill who swear an oath to protect their constituents and to serve them in Washington, D.C., spending more time defending illegal immigrant gang members than their own constituents and law-abiding American citizens like Rachel Warren. And I saw the president personally on the campaign trail, and I continue to see him in his role as president of the United States, put American families first, reach out to the victims, the families of victims at the hands of illegal immigrant crime, and frankly, the actions and the words of the Democrat Party prove they could not care less about the American public. And maybe if they did, they'd see a bit higher approval ratings right now. Thanks for being here with us today. Peter.
Thank you, Karoline. To follow up on something that you just said, why do Ivy League schools get so much federal funding?
It's a very good question, and it's a question the president has obviously raised in his discussions and negotiations with not just Harvard, but also Columbia and many other Ivy League institutions. We have the Anti-Semitism Task Force, which the president promised and delivered on. The Anti-Semitism Task Force is across the government, representatives from various federal agencies who meet on a weekly basis to discuss the question that you just raised. And I think a lot of Americans are wondering why their tax dollars are going to these universities when they are not only indoctrinating our nation's students, but also allowing such egregious illegal behavior to occur.
To follow up on immigration, deporting American citizens to Central American prisons, is it legal, or do you need to change the law to do it?
Well, it's another question that the president has raised. It's a legal question that the president is looking into. And he talked about this yesterday when with his meeting with President Bukele in the Oval Office. He would only consider this, if legal, for Americans who are the most violent, egregious, repeat offenders of crime who nobody in this room wants living in their communities.
And then there's this CHNB thing. President Biden let more than 530,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela into the U.S. with this CHNB program. He did it with the stroke of a pen. And now a judge will not let President Trump undo it with the stroke of a pen. So are you guys going to give all 530,000 plus people individual deportation hearings, or are you just going to try to deport them?
I spoke to White House counsel's office about this morning because obviously another rogue district court judge is trying to block the administration's mass deportation efforts with this latest injunction. We will fight this in the court of law, and we will ensure that every individual who illegally entered our country and was really taken advantage of by the previous administration because they abused the parole system in this country to fast track legal status, as they said, for these illegal immigrants, and they completely abused our legal system. Many of these paroled individuals were then given temporary protective status, which the intention of that TPS was only supposed to be used in times of war or storm or destruction in the home countries of these migrants. It was completely abused. These migrants came here for economic reasons, and they illegally entered our country, and the president is not going to tolerate that. And so we will continue to focus on deporting as many individuals as we can. Jennifer.
One on tariffs and one on Russia. Can you give us any sort of an update on which deals are in hand or are close? Which countries are reaching a deal on tariffs? And then on Russia, can you give us an update on what the agreement was with Russia? The president yesterday said that he thinks we'll be seeing some very good deals very soon. Can you talk a little bit about what Russia agreed to?
Sure. I don't want to get ahead of our United States Trade Ambassador and Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Treasury, all the great individuals who are working incredibly hard to cut these good trade deals. And the president's deeply involved in this as well. He has made it clear to his trade team he wants to personally sign off on all of these deals too. And so I don't want to get ahead of them on announcements, but obviously, as you've heard from numerous administration officials, there have been many talks with countries. We've had more than 15 deals, pieces of paper put on the table, proposals that are actively being considered. And as we've said consistently, more than 75 countries have reached out. So there's a lot of work to do. We very much understand that, but we do believe that we can announce some deals very soon.
And then on Russia, can you say, did Russia agree to anything with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff?
I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations as well. What I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. And
Yeah.
I also want to thank your press office for releasing that information that you cited up there regarding the ICE arrests over the last couple of days. And I have them right here, but what I might ask is, why not release the same information for those who were deported to El Salvador?
Well, first of all, the information was released by the Department of Homeland Security. The individuals on the flights to El Salvador are foreign terrorists, and those are counterterrorism operations. They are much different than the arrests and final order of removals that you see on a day-to-day basis that law enforcement agents are conducting around the country.
That information was not, to that detail, was not released by DHS, though.
I just told you the reason. It was a counterterrorism operation, a deportation of foreign terrorists, not illegal criminals who have been convicted of heinous crimes living in our American communities. It's two different things. Foreign terrorist, illegal immigrant criminal, two different things, two different definitions. You should look them up. Christian, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Does the president support raising the corporate tax rate to pay for all these other tax cuts he wants to see move through Congress?
Look, I've seen this idea proposed. I've heard this idea discussed, but I don't believe the president has made a determination on whether he supports it or not.
And then secondly, do you have any information on the status of Eden Alexander? Hamas says they lost contact with the unit guarding him following an Israeli airstrike earlier today.
I don't have updates. I have not seen that report, but I can certainly check in with our National Security Council. I have spoken to the president about Eden Alexander, and he's made it very clear to our national security team that finding him is a priority, but unfortunately I don't have any updates to share. But it's a very important matter, and certainly we can check in. Sure.
Hi. How concerned is the president that a federal judge could hold a Trump administration official in contempt of court for defying deportation orders?
We are complying with all court orders. So I see what you're trying to do there with that question, but we're very confident that every action taken by this administration is within the confines of the law, and we continue to comply with the court's orders. And you have seen that, and the president made that clear yesterday in the Oval Office with President Bukele. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. Could you, just going back to El Salvador, could you just explain to us a little bit more about the legal basis on which you may be able to send US citizens to prison there? I know you said that President Trump is looking at it, but can you explain to us a little bit more about how that might be possible?
We're looking at it, and when I have more for you to share, I certainly will. Sure.
Still going off the El Salvador questions, yesterday in the Oval Office, administration officials made it very clear that El Salvador is responsible for Mr. Abrego Garcia, yet El Salvador's president said we're not going to do anything with him. So my question is, who is responsible for this man and where he's going to end up?
Well, no. First of all, President Bukele said that he is not going to smuggle a foreign terrorist back into the United States of America, as many in this room in the Democrat Party seemingly want him to do. Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland, because he is a foreign terrorist and a MS-13 gang member. Not only have we confirmed that, President Bukele yesterday in the Oval Office confirmed that as well. So he went back to his home country, where he will face consequences for his gang affiliation and his engagement in human trafficking. I'm not sure what is so difficult about this for everyone in the media to understand, and it's appalling, truly appalling, that there has been so much time covering this alleged human trafficker and this gang member, MS-13 gang member. It's truly striking to me. Karen.
Thanks, Caroline. The president was posting on Truth Social today about helping American farmers. And last week in his cabinet meeting, he was talking about a plan to work with farmers to retain workers who are in the U.S. illegally, provided that they leave and then come back through what he said would be a legal process. Can you give details on what that would look like, how many workers he's talking about, how long a plan like that would take to implement, and the timeline for more details on getting this actually to implementation?
I can check in with our immigration and our policy team and get you some more details on that, Karen.
And is this something he wants to roll out soon? I mean, he was talking back and forth with Secretary Rollins.
Right.
This is kind of imminent that he wants to do this.
Yeah, look, the president is in constant communication with all of his cabinet secretaries, particularly Secretary Rollins, who has the backs of American farmers and ranchers. It's something that he spoke about with her in the front of all the cameras in the cabinet room, but I'll check in with not only our immigration team, but also with USDA, and we'll get you an answer. Jonathan.
Hi, Caroline.
Hi, it's good to see you in here.
You too. The president has long said that it would be an abuse of power for a president to direct prosecutors to investigate him. Last week, President Trump explicitly directed the Justice Department to scrutinize Chris Krebs to see if it can find any evidence of criminal wrongdoing. How is that not an abuse of power to direct the Justice Department to look into an individual, a named individual?
Look, the president signed that executive order. It's the position of the president in this White House that it's well within his authority to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have signed it. And he signed it, and that's his policy. Jeff, how you doing?
Fine, thanks. Thanks, Caroline. A follow-up on Harvard. The president floated on Truth Social, I believe, the possibility of removing tax-exempt status. How serious is that threat, and are there other universities he's considering? And then a follow-up question on foreign policy. What are your Can you give us an update on what the president hopes to come from the next round of talks with Iran?
Sure. First, when it comes to Harvard, as I said, the president has been quite clear they must follow federal law. He also wants to see Harvard apologize, and Harvard should apologize for the egregious anti-Semitism that took place on their college campus against Jewish American students. There were professors who said that he had engaged in discriminatory behavior against Jewish students. Of course, you had the former president of the university saying bullying and harassment depends on the context. You also had an encampment on Harvard Yard that we all saw play out before the cameras. The university failed to impose formal discipline on any students for this anti-Semitic conduct violations, including the occupation of a campus building and the disruption of classes with bullhorns. The president believes Harvard should apologize to its Jewish American students for allowing such egregious behavior. As for the tax-exempt status, I would defer you to the IRS for any updates. I do want to answer your question on Iran, of course. The maximum pressure campaign on Iran continues, but as you know, the president has made it clear he wants to see dialogue and discussion with Iran while making his directive about Iran never being able to obtain a nuclear weapon quite clear. And the president spoke to the Sultan of Oman today, who helped facilitate these talks. I have a readout for all of you. He held a call with the Sultan of Oman today, and he thanked him for hosting the first direct meeting between the United States and Iran and emphasized the need for Iran to end its nuclear program through negotiations. The two leaders also discussed the United States' ongoing operations against the Houthis and emphasized that the Houthis will pay a severe price until they end their attacks on maritime traffic in the Red Sea. As you know, an additional negotiation between Steve Witkoff and Iran's representative has been scheduled for Saturday. And since these are ongoing negotiations, I have nothing more to add on that. Sure.
Oh, thank you, Caroline. When you said that the president said that Iran will never have nuclear weapon, is the focus on dismantling the entire nuclear program, or it just restricting enriched uranium or the missile program?
The president does not want to see Iran have a nuclear program. He does not want Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. He's been very clear about this. Shelby. Shelby, you have a seat today.
I know, stole it.
Glad to see it.
Two quick ones on TikTok. First, is the president expecting to extend the TikTok ban that's now June 19th if China doesn't come to the table in time?
Well, June 19th is a long ways away, obviously. I think it's 2 months away. 2 months is a long time in the Trump administration, as you have all seen. We work at Trump speed around here. We get a lot done, so definitely don't want to get ahead. The vice president continues to lead these negotiations and talks. The president's involved, and they're ongoing.
And then the president previously said he'd consider reducing tariffs on China in order to get a TikTok deal done. Is that option still on the table?
Look, the president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money. So the president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America. Sure.
On tariffs. Yesterday in the Oval Office...
Which outlet are you with?
The Canadian Public Broadcaster.
Oh, nice to see you.
Thank you. Yesterday in the Oval Office, President Trump suggested that there could be some help for automakers. I'm wondering what that looks like. Is it tariff relief on the 25% tariffs that are in place right now, or the new tariffs that are coming up in May on auto parts? And a second on Canada, if I may. President Trump's tone when it comes to Canada-U.S. relations, Canadians have noticed it's shifted a bit in the past few weeks. Ever since the election campaign started, he stopped talking about Canada becoming the 51st state, at least publicly. I'm wondering if that's on purpose and why.
I would reject the president's position on Canada has shifted. Perhaps he just hasn't been asked about Canada by questions from this group in the Oval Office when they see him almost every day, but the president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. As for autos and auto parts, I don't have anything to read out for you there, but I think the point the president was making is flexibility, and he has flexibility flexibility when it comes to negotiations and talks, but ultimately his goal in his fair trade deals that he is pursuing with many countries around the world is to put the American worker first. And we had automakers and auto workers here at the White House on Liberation Day who believe in this president and his negotiating ability to put them first and to bring those jobs back to the United States of America. And the president's been very clear about that in his conversations with the automakers as well. Deanna, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. One on Ukraine and one on China. On Ukraine, this past weekend, Zelensky offered an invitation to President Trump, extending an offer for him to visit Ukraine. Just wondering if there's any update on that. Has Trump seen that offer and what he's thinking about?
I don't know. Actually, I haven't talked to the president about that, or if he saw Zelensky's offer. I'm sure he did. I haven't spoken to him about it. I can ask him what he thinks. I certainly don't have any plans to share on a potential trip to Ukraine, though.
And then on China, this last week, Chinese officials were posting videos on, social media sites depicting Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk in AI-generated videos working in factories, putting together Nike shoes and iPhones and products like that. Does the White House, have they seen these videos? Do you guys have a response to that?
I have seen the videos. I'm not sure who made the videos or if we can verify the authenticity, but whoever made it clearly does not see the potential of the American worker, the American workforce. The president believes in the American people, and he knows that we have the best not only consumer base in the world, but also the best workforce in the world, and that's why he's so focused on bringing investments home and shoring up our critical supply chains and bolstering our manufacturing here as well. Brett.
Thanks, Caroline. Would the president support a ban on members of Congress trading stocks?
I'm certain that's something the president would be interested in looking at, and I can ask him if he would support such a bill. Sure. Yes.
I have a question about the president's post from this morning on farmers. He asked farmers to be patient and just hold on. But a lot of farmers that I've talked to in the last week or so have said, they're in the middle of spring planting season, and that a trade war makes everything sort of up in the air. What would his message to them be? And also, is there anything specifically planned to provide relief like in President Trump's last term?
Yes, well, relief is being considered. The Secretary of Agriculture, I know, has spoken to the president about that, and again, it's being considered. And as for the president's message to the farmers, he put it out himself. He could speak for himself much better than I can speak for him, and so I would just direct you to the statement he had telling the farmers again and reiterating his support for them and that he has their backs, which he certainly does. Kelly, in the back.
Thanks, Caroline. 2 questions. The first one, a Georgia man was just arrested over alleged threats to kill Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard. Reportedly, there is now increased security around the FBI Deputy Director. Can you talk about the level of threats against various administration officials, and then a second one on Biden?
I'm sorry to hear that. I had not seen that report. It's very unfortunately, and obviously the White House, the president, and the entire administration condemn any threats of violence against any administration officials or public officials on both sides of the aisle here in Washington, D.C. It shouldn't be tolerated, and we commend the local law enforcement agencies for arresting this individual.
Former President Biden, he's set to deliver his first major speech since leaving office tonight. He plans to talk about what I'm told will be Social Security under the current administration, closing of offices, longer wait times, harder for seniors and people with disabilities to access earned benefits, is what Democrats have been saying today. I wanted to get the president's response, or if he plans to respond to this, and comments on what Democrats are calling cuts to Social Security.
My first reaction when seeing former President Biden was speaking tonight was, I'm shocked that he is speaking at nighttime. I thought his bedtime was much earlier than his speech tonight. I understand the topic of his speech will be Social Security. Let me make it very clear ahead of former President Biden's remarks. President Trump, is absolutely certain about protecting Social Security benefits for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens and seniors who have paid into this program. He will always protect that program. He campaigned on it, he protected it in his first term, and he's back again to continue protecting it. On the topic of Social Security, I have some news before I let you all go. Later this afternoon, the president will be signing a presidential memorandum aimed at stopping illegal aliens and other ineligible people from obtaining Social Security Act benefits. The memorandum will direct the administration to ensure ineligible aliens are not receiving funds from the Social Security Act programs. It will expand the Social Security Administration's fraud prosecutor program to at least 50 U.S. attorney offices and establishes a Medicare and Medicaid fraud prosecution program in 15 U.S. attorney offices. The memorandum will also require the Social Security Administration Inspector General to investigate earning reports for individuals aged 100 or older with mismatched Social Security records to combat identity theft. And the memorandum will direct the Social Security Administration to consider whether to reinstate the use of civil monetary penalties against individuals who engage in Social Security fraud, an effort that has been paused for several years. These taxpayer-funded benefits should be only for eligible taxpayers. And President Biden should think about what he did in his last term, which is allow tens of millions of illegal people into our country, many of whom were fraudulently receiving these benefits. So you'll hear from the president on that later, and we will see you later in the East Room. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Caroline.
That was the White House press briefing. I didn't even realize that former President Biden was speaking tonight. Let me check something on this. Hang on a moment here. Hang on one moment. Let me know your thoughts on. Let's take some comments from you guys on the press briefing. Yeah, first public remarks today. President Biden is speaking tonight. It's his. Hold on, I want to see if I have an article about it I can show you. Maybe we'll cover it. I don't know. That's interesting. I'm just seeing some articles saying it's like his first. His first speech since the presidency? Scripps News called it his first speech since the presidency. CBS News says it's his first public remark since leaving office. We may have to cover that. That is, let's see, I didn't even know what was happening. (5:45 p.m. Eastern Time. 5:45 Eastern Time. Nikki thinks we can't not cover it. I think I might end up covering that, you know. It's his first public remarks since leaving office. All right, we might come back on the air for that. Anyways, oh, by the way, thanks to Channeling Gary for your support. Let me just say a couple quick thanks, and I'm going to take a couple of your comments on the air about the press briefing. Thanks to Channeling Gary, Heavenly, sorry, I can't even see the name here. Heavenly Intervention, thank you. Dodger Blue, Sean, and the Supreme Leader of Iran, Lift the Veil, Dr. Evil 814, thank you. Dr. Evil 814. Come on, I'll say come on S. I don't even know if that's meant to be a nasty name, but I don't want to even read the whole thing. It's you know, I have to be everything with our viewers. Sometimes you never know, so I probably shouldn't have even said that part. Anyways, I don't think it's supposed to be nasty, but I want to be careful here. Eamon O'Leary, PZ Papa Zulu, Marnie, Jan Eric Edvardson, thank you. And Scar DHD, thanks for your support over there on Twitch. Let me get to some comments about the briefing. David Carson says cover President Biden's speech. Yeah, I think we're going to cover that. Mr. Banks thinks Biden speaking is must-see TV. Yeah, I think it's worth covering. Let's see here. So I will say, she said during the briefing, she said that, the whole issue, as we talked about this a lot in the pre-show. I don't want to get into all the details of it right now, but she was asked about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is the man who originally came from El Salvador, was living in the U.S. With a U.S. citizen he was married to. And in 2019, there was a court order saying don't deport him to El Salvador. But in March, he was deported to El Salvador. The White House, the Trump administration admitted in court that it had made a mistake in doing so. The Supreme Court has now ordered that the Trump administration facilitate his return to the U.S., but it does not seem like the Trump administration is making much of an effort to get him into the U.S. And certainly from Trump and President Bukele of El Salvador's remarks yesterday, when Bukele visited Trump, it did not seem like any kind of big effort was underway, or any kind of significant effort at all was underway to return him to the U.S. So there is this question of, is the Trump administration defying a court order to facilitate his coming back to the U.S., being brought back to the U.S. Now, the White House says, and Karoline Leavitt said it during the briefing, that they are complying with the orders. She repeatedly kept saying during the briefing that this issue should not be being made much of because she kept saying he is a foreign terrorist. She said that multiple times. He's a foreign terrorist and a human trafficker. We talked about this a bunch before the broadcast, but just to remind people, he has never been charged or convicted of a crime in the U.S. or I believe in El Salvador even. The U.S. government claims that he is a member of the MS-13 gang. I guess the U.S. government is claiming he's a foreign terrorist who's involved in U.S. trafficking. There is certainly not compelling publicly available evidence to support that claim. I don't know exactly what evidence they have privately. As I mentioned in the, hold on a second, in the pre-coverage, we discussed this. In the current district judge overseeing Abrego Garcia's case mentioned something about this in a court order roughly a week ago, and this is, I'll show you in a second, this is that court order. I'll just show you this. Hang on a moment. She said in her court order, Judge Zenas, I believe, Paula Zenas, on March 29, 2019, DHS initiated removal proceedings against Abrego Garcia. DHS argued for Abrego Garcia to be detained in ICE custody pending resolution of the requested relief. DHS relied principally on a singular unsubstantiated allegation that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13. She said the evidence against Abrego Garcia being a member of MS-13 back then consisted of nothing more than his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and a vague, uncorroborated allegation from a confidential informant claiming he belonged to MS-13's Western clique in New York, a place he has never lived. So Judge Zenas, who is currently overseeing his case, certainly does not think the government has presented compelling evidence that he's a member of MS-13. Now, there's some different opinions of this floating around, but I just want to clarify that certainly there is not publicly available compelling evidence that he is a member of MS-13. Now, maybe the government has very compelling evidence that it has kept to itself. It's possible. I don't know. But I just want to clarify what we know about that evidence. But anyways, regardless of that, there's the question of whether he really is a member of MS-13. But aside from that, that's not relevant to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did not find that relevant, whatever the evidentiary situation was. The Supreme Court issued a order last week saying that the Trump administration needed to facilitate Abrego Garcia being brought back to the U.S. The Trump administration says they are in compliance with that court order. Critics say they are not complying with the court order. There's supposed to be a hearing on that with Judge Zenas, a hearing on that case coming up this afternoon. So I'm sure there'll be more developments on that. But there's this overall question of, is the Trump administration defying a Supreme Court order to facilitate Abrego Garcia's coming back to the U.S.? But, we didn't get basically the position that I heard her say in the press briefing was that we are in compliance with it. But we'll see how that develops. There was one question about the press briefing. I can't remember what the response was. I don't believe the response was that long, but there was one question about whether the courts could take some sort of action against the administration for not complying with their orders relevant to this kind of thing. I have no idea if that might happen and what that might be. By the way, thank you to PZ Papa Zulu. Hey, I really appreciate that. PZ Papa Zulu, thank you. Also, Lift the Veil for the gift memberships, and Per Holstrand, our new member. Goju Ryu says the Trump Supreme Court told them that he needs to come back. Well, what their position was that he needs to facilitate, the Trump administration needs to facilitate his coming back. I'm not a legal expert. From my understanding, though, that it's not completely specific. So there's debate over what that facilitate means. Skeletor thinks he is not a citizen. We owe him nothing, even if he wasn't a terrorist. I mean, that's your opinion, but the Supreme Court said that the Trump administration needs to facilitate his coming back to the U.S. That's what the Supreme Court said last week. Jeff Gurren says, guilty until proven innocent, right? Take a few more comments here. Again, I think we're going to cover former President Biden speaking at 5:45 Eastern Time tonight. Give me one moment here. One moment. Also, this was something from the press briefing that we heard. You can see here from AP. The White House says the ball is in China's court on resolving tariffs and trade issues. The ball is in China's court, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt said today at a news briefing. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much longer. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, the American consumer, or to put it another way, they need our money. Oh, sorry. It's the White House press briefing. If you didn't see it, you can rewind because we just saw it. So I got to change the headline because people will be confused. It'll be like, why does it say now? Why does it say now? Can I? Let me show you a little more about the Abrego Garcia thing. We're going to be hearing more about that in the coming days, maybe more later today on that. I want to talk about that a little more. Hold on. The Washington Post says it is sending the U.S. toward a constitutional crisis. You can see here the deportation standoff sending a U.S. toward a constitutional crisis. El Salvador's president ruled out returning to the U.S. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a mistakenly deported Maryland man whose case is at the center of a legal battle over the Trump administration's mass deportation campaign. Abrego Garcia was among hundreds of immigrants sent to El Salvador last month, despite a 2019 court order protecting him from deportation to El Salvador. Although the Trump administration has admitted his deportation was an administrative error, officials said they do not have the authority to secure his return. Abrego Garcia's lawyer says he sits in a foreign prison solely at the behest of the U.S. as the product of a Kafkaesque mistake. Here's what to know. Who is he? He is a Salvadoran citizen who entered the U.S. illegally at age 16 and is now married to a U.S. citizen. The father of 3 and sheet metal apprentice had been in the U.S. for nearly 14 years. He was born in 1995 in El Salvador's capital city, San Salvador, according to court documents filed in a U.S. immigration court in 2019, when he was detained in 2019 in Maryland by police while seeking construction jobs. His mother ran a business in El Salvador selling pupusas. The success of the family business made them a target of the local faction of the Barrio 18th Street gang, court documents said. Members of the gang began demanding regular rent from the business and threatened to hurt Abrego Garcia's older brother, Cesar, if the family did not pay, the document said, noting that they did so whenever they could. When Abrego Garcia, after Cesar, Abrego Garcia's brother, fled for the United States, the gang tried to recruit Abrego Garcia, who was about 12 at the time, according to court documents. They stalked him, prompting the family to move twice and ultimately close their business, after which the threats persisted, the documents said. When Abrego Garcia was 16, his family sent him to the U.S., which he entered without inspection, illegally, according to court documents. He joined his brother, who is now a U.S. citizen, in Maryland, where he worked in construction and met his wife, with whom he has 3 children. In 2019, an immigration judge granted him a form of relief called withholding of removal, which prohibits deportation to El Salvador unless the order is terminated, according to 2019 court documents. To obtain this order, a non-citizen must prove he is more likely than not to suffer persecution if returned to his country of origin, the document stated. He was stopped by ICE officers on March 12th while driving to his home in Maryland with his 5-year-old son, who was on the spectrum for autism. He was detained and sent to Texas before federal authorities deported him to El Salvador on March 15th. A Justice Department filing on Saturday confirmed that Abrego Garcia is being held in El Salvador's Terrorism Confinement Center, an isolated mega prison known as CICOT. Attorneys for Abrego Garcia have warned holding him in a prison that houses many gang members puts him at the risk of harm or death. I want to keep reading this because it's just interesting background. I think it's important to kind of go over the background here of this case in some detail. What is he accused of? The Washington Post says he was detained in 2019 alongside 3 other young men who were soliciting employment outside a Home Depot. Officers with the Prince George County's police department repeatedly asked Abrego Garcia whether he was a gang member, which he denied. He was taken into ICE custody, with agents arguing that local police had, quote, verified he was an active member of MS-13 with the Western clique in New York based on his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and the words of a confidential informant. The details from that informant, which officials have not publicly disclosed, did not result in Abrego Garcia being charged with a crime or otherwise implicated. Nothing came of it, U.S. District Court Judge Paula Zenas wrote. Abrego Garcia has never been arrested or charged with any crime in either the U.S. or El Salvador, according to public records and his attorneys. Is he an MS-13 member? The current district court judge overseeing his case, Paula Zenas, said there is no evidence that Abrego Garcia, who has never lived in New York, is a gang member. Abrego Garcia and his attorneys have also denied this claim, which Trump officials repeated today, actually. Was said in the press briefing. Trump has declared MS-13 a foreign terrorist organization, which the administration said nullifies the immigration judge's 2019 order protecting him from deportation. Relatives of others deported during last month's sudden airlift have also denied that they were gang members, and the Associated Press reported that some were targeted for everyday tattoos. The administration has acknowledged in court that many do not have criminal records in the U.S. What have U.S. courts said about this? Last week, the Supreme Court the Supreme Court backed a lower court ruling in requiring the Trump administration to, quote, facilitate Abrego Garcia's release, but said that Zenas' order for the government to, quote, effectuate his return was unclear and might overstep the judiciary's power. But they did say that the Trump administration needed to facilitate his release. Judge Zenas then ordered the Trump administration to share updates on its efforts to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return and his location. The government, however, refused to meet the deadline, saying on Friday it needed more time. On Saturday, an administration official confirmed Abrego Garcia is alive and secure in the Salvadoran megaprison. On Sunday, federal officials said the Supreme Court ruling only meant that Abrego Garcia should be allowed to return should he be released from El Salvador, arguing that facilitate means to remove any obstacles in the U.S. that would block his entry. So the Trump administration is arguing that facilitate, it seems like they are arguing that facilitate doesn't require any kind of positive action to make it happen. The Trump administration also argued he is no longer eligible from the protection for deportation that should have prevented his removal in the first place. What has the administration said? The case has prompted friction between the Trump administration and the judicial branch, despite Trump saying he would comply with any Supreme Court demand for Abrego Garcia's return. The administration has admitted that Abrego Garcia's expulsion from the U.S. was based on an administrative error, but said it cannot remove him from the Salvadoran megaprison because he is now in the custody of a foreign government, and officials have disputed the district court's jurisdiction in the case. In its Sunday filing, the Justice Department argued that the federal courts have no authority to direct the executive branch to conduct foreign relations in a particular way or engage with a foreign sovereign in a given manner, an argument echoed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said yesterday, no court in the U.S. has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the U.S. Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele has said he will not send Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. How can I return him to the U.S.? Bukele said yesterday. I smuggle him into the United States? Of course I'm not going to do it. The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? Anyways, that's a summary of where we're at. I just wanted to read that background. I know it's a lot, it's a lot of reading, but at the same time, I think it's important to be clear. There's a lot of very quick takes about this floating around, and I think it's important to get more clear on the details. As I said before the press briefing, very often with news stories, there are these short, quick takes floating around that do, I believe, significantly oversimplify things and don't represent the much more complex details behind news stories often. So where is this all going? I don't know. Jesse's Girl says this episode is a cliffhanger. Kitty Tiger says there was no mistake. Repeatedly, the U.S. government has said, the Trump administration has said it made a mistake. Although in court, sending him to El Salvador. Stephen Miller, at one point, I believe, has declared there was no mistake, if I have that right. So that would be a different view from the same administration. Let me see if I can find something about that. Yeah, like The Hill had an article from yesterday with the headline, Stephen Miller contradicts DOJ court docs. Stephen Miller, White House aide, said that the Maryland man, that there was no mistake, there was no error. So that's, again, that would go against what the Trump administration has said in court repeatedly. One of our viewers said State Department presser is spicy. I don't know that I want to jump on that right now. Well, I think we're going to come back for President Biden's speech at 5:45 Eastern. Maybe we'll look at it for a second. Just for a second, I'll jump over to the State Department briefing, but I don't think we're going to stick with that for the moment, for any kind of long amount of time. But I can really quickly just show a couple seconds of that.
And then Congress either accepts it or they have their own ideas, which happens more often than not. I can tell you that whatever you've seen in public was not released from this entity. It was not released from this department. It was not released by the secretary. that there is no final plan, final budget, final dynamic. That is up to the White House and the President of the United States as they continue to work on their budget plan and what they will submit to Congress. So I would suggest that you check with the White House. But the kinds of numbers, and what we tend to see is reporting that is early or wrong or based on leaked documents from somewhere unknown, and then everyone writes stories about those things. And earlier, when I was speaking with our bullpen here, whom I love most of the time, it would be wise to be cautious before acting on every single element you see leading up to something as important as this budget coming in from President Trump. So we'll wait and see. Of course, again, these are not known or finalized or planned. Only President Trump has that information, and we're going to see it soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'll follow up on that, though. There was some criticism from Democratic lawmakers about contributions to international organizations dropping by 89% from $1.4 billion last year to
I think that question might have been about reporting about reporting saying that there was a plan to cut a bunch of the State Department budget. If you give me a second, I'll look that up. By the way, X-File gave 50 people memberships in the YouTube chat. Wow, that's incredible. Hey, that's really generous of you, X-File. Make sure you thank X-File or anybody else who gave you a gift membership or a gift subscription. That's really nice of you. Thanks so much, X-File. Also, thanks to Joel Dulka. Thank you, Joel Dulka, for your support. Also, X-File, I'm sorry, gave 55 people memberships. It was even more than that. And became a member. Thank you so much, X-File. Very generous of you. Thank you, Dennis Kennedy, by the way. And also for your support. Joel mentioned the Merwil Gutierrez story. I don't even know that one. Maybe I can get you a quick update on that. I haven't really heard about that. There's an article in the Guardian that says the headline, ICE deports Venezuelan teen despite repeatedly knowing he was not a target. I'm not familiar with the story, and it's about Merwil Gutierrez. They say, this is according to documented a newsroom dedicated to telling the stories of immigrants in New York City. I'll have to look this up. I'm not familiar with this story. So I'll take a look. I'll look into it after the broadcast. Thanks for mentioning it, Joel Dulka. Regarding the State Department budget, can I find something about that? Hold on a moment. Yeah, hold on. I think I have something about that I can show you right now about the State Department budget. I should. Yes, here it is. Hold on, you'll see it in a second. Trump administration wants to nearly halve State Department budget, to nearly cut it in half. That's a Reuters report from yesterday. U.S. President Trump's administration wants to slash the State Department budget by about half, according to internal planning documents reviewed by Reuters, a reduction that could see a nearly 30 U.S. missions shut and steep cuts to foreign aid. The proposed cuts of nearly $30 billion in fiscal 2026 are outlined in a so-called pass back, the response by the White House Budget Office, the OMB, to State Department funding requests for the upcoming fiscal year. While the department can request revisions, one U.S. official said the final version will likely be changed only a tad before it's submitted for approval to Congress, where the chances are high that some funds will be restored in Congress. The internal document was first reported by the Washington Post. As part of the plan, yet to be finalized, the administration is considering a recommendation to close at least 27 U.S. missions, largely in Africa and Europe. 10 of those are embassies, and the rest are consulates. The deliberations come as the Trump administration and billionaire Elon Musk's Doge pursue a rapid and massive downsizing of the federal government, cutting billions of dollars in spending and terminating thousands of employees. Anyways, I think that might have been what was being asked about at the top of the State Department briefing. Maybe I can go back and just check that, because I have the briefing right here. Is that what the first question was about? One of our viewers said it was getting spicy in the briefing. So I think we saw the tail end of the question. Here it is. Is this it? Trying to cue it up for you here. All right, I think I have it queued up. Let's see if this works. Hang on, give it a moment.
The nation and the world by the global left.
I know, surprising that it comes from me, isn't it? Surprising that comes from me.
It has to do with...
It's my topper. Engagement in the Indo-Pacific and the U.S.-Japan bilateral relationship.
This isn't live. This was moments
to El Salvador's
ago.
prison. Because of this, our nation is safer and more secure. As Secretary Rubio said of President Trump and President Bukele, our hemisphere is lucky to have two leaders who are totally aligned in their commitment to law and order. Last, in non-foreign policy news, I want to applaud the Trump administration's efforts
I'm just getting to the
drug
first question.
safety, lowering research. Bravo. Your questions, sir, Mr. Matt Lee, the AP.
Said that only President Trump can undo the damage done to the world, the nation and the world by the global left.
I know, surprising that it comes from me, isn't it? Surprising that comes from me.
This has to do with, you're talking about tariffs, right? The whole world free trade, international trade regulations, which began after the Second World War.
Well,
I'm looking at one Eisenhower, two Nixon, Reagan, Bush,
Matt, may I answer you? I know.
Bush two,
yes.
And I'm.
Yes.
Well,
you know, there's something. Let me answer you, sir. Let me answer you. Let me answer you. Everything that starts like trade. There's always a good idea, right? You always have a really great plan, and things move along, and it's very good and it's very nice. And then time changes, and the left gets control of certain aspects, certain countries, certain Congresses, and things begin to change, and spending begins to increase, and arrangements begin to change, and are not necessarily as good for the United States. The fact of the matter is, at this point in time, we are on an unsustainable path. A burden that is crushing. You see it in the actions that this administration has to take regarding the budget of this entire entity. This becomes an addiction. It's an addiction to other people's money. And as Margaret Thatcher noted, of course, is that the main problem with socialism, sir, the main problem with socialism is that is when you run out of other people's money. Because that eventually happens. I know that's not perhaps satisfactory for the Associated Press. But I love you anyway, Matt. I love you anyway. But your question is, at least my answer to what your statement was, is that at this point in time, President Trump is the only person that can undo the Leviathan that this trade framework became around the world, and he's doing it. And I've been watching this coverage, the pearl clutching It's been remarkable. This is going to be one of the greatest resets of many resets that the Trump administration has implemented, and it's going to make a difference not just for the American people, but for all those countries that realize that this has to change. So it'll be better for the world over.
My point was merely that, are you trying to say that all those presidents and who you just mentioned, Margaret Thatcher, are part of the global left?
I've just talked way too much already. I think I've answered that. Yes, sir. I think I've answered that.
All right. So on the grants that you just said were canceled, and I want to seg from this, can you be more specific about what those were? The two, what was it, 139?
Well, we'll get those details. What we do know is that the secretary himself.
All right, I'm not going to. This is a different press briefing, so I just wanted to see what the start of the press briefing was. But this is not a State Department press briefing stream. So, anyways, I just wanted to play a little of that for you. Maybe I'll take a couple more comments here, and let me just check if I have any kind of breaking news happen right now. AZ Intel I follow said there was a shooting reported at a high school in Texas. I'll have to look that up. I'll see if I can get you any information on that. In Dallas, says AZ Intel. WFAA says numerous officers and firefighters are responding to a high school in Dallas. Students were seen evacuating. Let's see. Police and school officials have not confirmed any details about the incident. CBS News Texas says there was a shooting call at the high school. There's no word on a suspect or details. All right, I'll keep an eye on it. I'll keep an eye on it. All right, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap up this live stream because we came on the air to cover the briefing. If you missed the White House press briefing, you can go back and rewind and watch it. I am planning on coming on the air to cover President Biden, his first speech of I had to laugh here because I was checking my X messages, and in my message request folder there's like 20 messages that are clearly spam from the last like the last hour. I'll have to delete all those. Anyways, we'll be back, I believe, to cover President Biden speaking, and I believe that's at 5:45 Eastern time. His first speech since his presidency. And so we'll probably come on a bit before then to cover that. So I hope you can join us for our live coverage of that later today. Let me take a break now. But I really appreciate you guys being here for this live stream. And thanks for chatting. Those of you who chatted, thanks for letting me read your comments on the air. And we will have more coverage soon. And I will post updates about the news on my X account when I'm not on the air. You can follow me over there. My X account is, oops, that's not my X account. My X account is, you'll see it in a second, pop up, @Lookner on X. @Lookner. Follow me there for breaking news coverage. And subscribe and follow the channel, Agenda Free TV. We cover all kinds of live breaking news without an agenda. Agenda Free TV. Oh, thanks to Fred Witherow for your support. Thank you, Fred. That's very kind of you. So subscribe and follow Agenda Free TV. Again, planning on coming back on the air pretty soon. I got to go get something to eat. I got to eat pretty quickly. Maybe in a couple hours or so, I'll be back on the air. All right, we got to wrap this up so I can eat something before the Biden stream. Okay. Hey, turn notifications on. I never can tell when big news is going to happen just like that. So if you want to get a notification every time we go live, so you can get informed when we're going live, not miss a stream, turn on our notifications. They're free. We do it through Discord. They work awesome. The mods will post a link to the notifications in the chat. You can find it in the description of this video on YouTube and Facebook as well. So sign up for those. Also, huge thanks to our mods. You guys are awesome. That is the reason why we can have a chat, is our moderators. They're the ones that allow us to have chat rooms. So thank you, moderators, for keeping things civil and respectful over in the chat. Beth Mythical over there on YouTube. Thank you. Larissa the Night Owl, our other YouTube moderators. Thank you. I Got That Fire, Matthew Kohai 3, Sarah, Papa Bear, Surly Dev, and all of our other Twitch moderators. Thank you. Margaret Riley, Kay Lowry Body. Thanks for being over there on Facebook. All of our other Facebook moderators, thank you so much for being there. And Linda Belk, Larry, Misha, thanks for moderating on X. Thank you so much. And also thanks to everybody who donated. So nice of you. I think I thanked everybody. That's your support is what keeps the channel on the air. So I really, really appreciate it. If you ever want to donate, you go to agendafree.tv, agendafree.tv. But thank you so much to, again, X-File, PZ Papa Zulu, everybody else who donated. Again, I think I thanked everybody on the way by. So hopefully I did. Oh, thank you to... thanks Brainstorm Warning for the shout out on Twitch as well. Hey, we also have a chat. You can chat with other viewers when we're not live on Discord. It's free. A bunch of our viewers like to do that. It's the same link as the notifications link to sign up for that. So check out that chat if you'd like. Thanks to our Discord mods for all you do to help. Thanks, Discord mods. Hey, also another good way to find out when we're live is to follow us on X, Agenda Free TV. I always post at Agenda Free TV. I always post there when we're going live. I post updates about the channel at Agenda Free TV. If you're on X, follow us over there. And real quick, I just want to mention, for those who watch on YouTube, I would suggest turning on the YouTube notifications. It's a little strange how to do that, but that'll help you also know when we're live. But over on YouTube, if you want to turn on the notifications, you got to click the bell. There's a bell here. You got to click the bell, and then you choose all notifications, which you'll see on the screen. So make sure you have that done if you're on YouTube. Hey, shout out to our subscribers on Facebook for supporting the channel, like Robert Rial II, Helen Anderson, thank you for subscribing, Kay Lowry Body, Margaret Riley, Lou Green, Sharon Klassen Goslin, Eve Richards, all of our other Facebook subscribers, thanks so much. Jennifer Ellers, thank you. Our Twitch subscribers, shout out to you for all your support, like Wall Street and Shaggy, and Crazy and KY, Stunned in the North, Massachusetts guy. Let me just check on something with the Dallas reporting. I have not seen confirmed that there's some sort of mass shooting in Dallas. I've seen that there's a police presence at a high school there. So I will certainly, as soon as I get off the air, let me get off right now, I'll look at that and see what's going on with that. But yeah, I haven't seen anything confirming any kind of mass shooting there. I mean, reports started coming in, I think, over 20 minutes ago. So I'll look into that after we get off the air. Matthew Kohai 3, thanks for subscribing. Stunned in the North. Wall Street. Geek, thanks for subscribing. Pragmatic Realist. Kelly Tiger. Uncle Floyd GG, all of our other subscribers over there on Twitch, thank you. And also our YouTube members like Roger Shoemaker, CAC813, Janet B, Joe Hart, Jorge M, Ronald Kane, Raina Hood, Evelyn in Maine, Gary Patees, Babs, Nigel Fortune, Brian Tampa, DeWatchman, Roger Shoemaker, CAC813, Stacy Bashford, thanks for being a member, Gary Baines, Jay Noswich, Evelyn in Maine, Janet B. Thank you, Janet. Patricia Grace. Dennis Kennedy. Bebop and Rocksteady, thanks for your support. Space Fraggle, thanks for being members. Space Fraggle, Carolyn Brookfield, Ronald Kane. I might be repeating some of these, sorry. Michael McIsaac. All right, I got to wrap this up. Raina Hood, Ronnie Kowaler, Susie Irish, all of our other viewers out there, thank you for watching. All right, I'm wrapping this up. I'll check on the Dallas thing as soon as I get off the air, and planning on coming back on to cover Joe Biden speaking his first speech, public speech since being president. That speech will be 5:45 p.m. Eastern time. I'll come on a bit before that. That's the plan. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon with more live breaking news coverage right here at Agenda Free TV.